I was the mistake they never let me forget. If it weren't for you, your father would have finished medical school, my mother would say, her lips pursed into a thin line of perpetual disappointment. We would have had the life we deserved. The life they deserved. As if my existence had robbed them of some grand destiny. My name is Sophia Mitchell, born Sophia Crane, and I was the unwelcome addition that arrived when my parents were barely 20. The pregnancy that interrupted my father's medical education and my mother's dance career. The reason they married too young, settled for less, grew to resent each other and, most of all, me. I was 7 when I first truly understood my place in the family. My little sister Isabel, born a carefully planned 5 years after me when our parents were ready for a child, had just won a ribbon at her dance recital. My mother clutched it like a precious treasure, eyes gleaming with tears of pride. She's a natural, just like I was, my mother said to a cluster of other parents. If only I'd had the chance to continue. Her gaze drifted to me, standing awkwardly to the side in my too large hand-me-down dress. The implication was clear, if only I hadn't come along. That night, I heard my parents arguing in the kitchen. Sophie's teacher says she should try out for the academic decathlon, my father said. She's the top of her class. We can't afford the trips, my mother snapped. Besides, Isabel's dance competition is that weekend. She has real talent, David. A future. Sophie has talent too, he said, though his defense was half-hearted at best. Book smarts, my mother dismissed. Fat lot of good they did you when you had to drop out, wasn't it? My father was silent after that. He always went silent when my mother brought up his abandoned medical career. The career he'd sacrificed because of me. As I grew, the pattern became clearer. Isabel was the golden child, beautiful, graceful, carefully groomed by my mother to fulfill the dancing dreams she herself had abandoned. I was the afterthought, the burden, the living reminder of their derailed ambitions. My father wasn't as openly resentful as my mother. Sometimes, I caught him looking at me with something like regret, or perhaps guilt. On rare occasions, he showed moments of genuine affection, helping with homework, defending me in small ways against my mother's constant criticism. But those moments were fleeting, easily quashed by my mother's overwhelming bitterness or his own regrets. By the time I reached high school, I'd learned to make myself scarce. I spent most of my time at the library, losing myself in books and the quiet companionship of the elderly librarian, Mrs. Chen, who never asked why I preferred spending my afternoons there rather than at home. You have a remarkable mind, Sophia, she told me once, as I helped her shelve new arrivals. You see connections others miss. I flushed with pleasure at the rare praise. I just like figuring things out. That's a gift, she said seriously. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. It was Mrs. Chen who encouraged me to apply for scholarships, who helped me navigate the college application process when my parents showed no interest. My father had managed to finish a nursing degree through night classes, and my mother taught dance at a community center, but the resentment of what could have been hung over our home like a persistent fog. Stanford, my mother scoffed when my acceptance letter arrived. Don't be ridiculous. We can't afford that. Full scholarship, I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. Plus a stipend for books and living expenses. For a moment, something flickered across my mother's face, surprise, perhaps even a reluctant admiration. But it quickly hardened back into her usual disdain. Well, I suppose you always did have your nose in a book instead of helping around the house. It was the closest thing to congratulations I would receive. My father offered a distracted "that's nice, Sophie" when I told him, his attention focused on helping Isabel prepare for her big dance showcase that weekend. I left for college that fall with a duffel bag, a backpack, and a desperate desire to never look back. Stanford became my haven, a place where my intelligence was valued, where I could finally breathe without the weight of being the unwanted child. It was during my sophomore year that I met Nathan. I was working at the campus coffee shop to supplement my scholarship stipend when he walked in, tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He ordered a complex espresso drink and then lingered at the counter, asking about the book I had propped open beside the register. Biochemical Engineering Principles, he read, eyebrows raised. Light reading? I felt myself blush. It's for class. I'm double majoring in chemical engineering and economics. Impressive. His smile reached his eyes, crinkling them at the corners. I'm struggling just to keep up with my MBA coursework. Something about his unguarded admiration, the way he looked at me like I was something special rather than an inconvenience, made my heart flutter in a way I'd never experienced. Nathan became a regular at the coffee shop, always arriving during my shifts, always finding some reason to extend our conversations. It took me embarrassingly long to realize he was interested in me romantically. When he finally asked me out, I stared at him in genuine confusion. Why? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He looked equally confused. Why what? Why would you want to go out with me? I clarified, feeling foolish but unable to understand why someone like him, confident, charming, clearly from a privileged background based on his casual mentions of family vacations and private schooling, would be interested in someone like me. His expression softened. Because you're brilliant and hardworking and surprisingly funny when you forget to be shy. He shrugged, suddenly looking less confident. And because I can't stop thinking about you. But if you're not interested. I am, I interrupted quickly. Interested, I mean. I'm just not used to this. To being asked out, he looked skeptical. To being wanted, I admitted, immediately wishing I could take back the too honest words. Something shifted in his expression, a deepening, a recognition that made me feel both exposed and understood. Then we should fix that, he said gently. Our first date was to a small museum of scientific innovation, where Nathan listened with genuine interest as I explained the engineering principles behind various exhibits. Our second was to a jazz club, where he introduced me to music I'd never had the opportunity to appreciate. By our third date, I was falling in love with his kindness, his curiosity, the way he looked at me like I was a fascinating puzzle he wanted to solve. I didn't tell him about my family. I made vague references to a strained relationship, changed the subject when he asked about my childhood. Nathan came from warmth, parents who had been married for 30 years, a sister he spoke to weekly, family traditions that stretched back generations. How could I explain that my most vivid childhood memory was my mother telling me I'd ruined her life? But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when you're building a relationship on openness and trust. The truth emerged during spring break of my junior year, when Nathan invited me to join his family at their lake house rather than return to my empty dorm room. "You're not going home?" he asked when I hesitated. "No," I said simply. "I usually stay on campus during breaks." "Every break?" He frowned. "You haven't gone home once since I've known you." I fidgeted with my coffee cup. "My parents and we don't really get along." "All families have their issues," he said, clearly not understanding the depth of the estrangement. "But avoiding them entirely doesn't solve anything." Something inside me snapped. After nearly 2 years of carefully sidestepping the truth, of protecting him from the ugliness of my origins, I was suddenly tired of pretending. My parents hate me, Nathan, I said flatly. They hate me because I was born too early and ruined their plans. My mother reminds me every chance she gets that I'm the reason she never became a professional dancer, that my father never became a doctor. I'm the mistake they never let me forget. Nathan's face paled. That can't be true. No? When I got my Stanford acceptance letter, do you know what my mother said? That I always had my nose in a book instead of helping around the house. That was her response to a full-ride scholarship to one of the best universities in the country. I was shaking now, years of suppressed hurt bubbling to the surface. The last time I went home was Christmas of freshman year. My sister got a car. I got a second-hand sweater with the price tag still on it, $12 from the clearance rack. When I called on my 20th birthday, my father answered, then had to ask my mother if they had plans for Sophie's birthday thing. I hadn't realized I was crying until Nathan gently wiped a tear from my cheek. Sophia, he said softly, I had no idea. Because I didn't want you to know, I admitted. Your family sounds so perfect, so loving. I was ashamed. Of what? Of them treating you badly? He looked genuinely perplexed. That's on them, not you. It was such a simple statement, but it cracked something open inside me. The idea that I wasn't somehow responsible for my parents' resentment, that their treatment of me reflected their failings, not mine, it was a perspective that had never been offered to me before. Come home with me, Nathan said, taking my hands. Meet my family. See what it's supposed to be like. I was terrified but agreed. The week at the lake house with Nathan's family was like stepping into an alternate universe where parents actually liked their children, where siblings teased but ultimately supported each other, where family meant safety rather than criticism. Nathan's mother, Laura, welcomed me with a warmth that made my throat tight. His father, Richard, asked thoughtful questions about my studies and seemed genuinely impressed by my answers. His sister, Emma, immediately included me in their family jokes and traditions. No one made me feel like an intruder or a burden. On our third night there, after everyone else had gone to bed, Nathan found me sitting on the dock, staring out at the moonlit water. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, settling beside me. I keep waiting, I admitted. For what? For them to change. To decide I'm not worth the effort after all. I couldn't look at him as I confessed this deep-seated fear. It's what always happens. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. My mom asked if you had dietary restrictions 3 separate times before you arrived, he finally said. Dad reorganized his entire library because he wanted to show you his collection of first edition science books. Emma changed her flight to arrive a day early so she wouldn't miss meeting you. He took my hand, his palm warm against mine. They already care about you, Sophia. Because I care about you. Because you're worth caring about. I rested my head on his shoulder, overwhelmed by the simple acceptance he and his family offered so freely, something I'd craved my entire life. I love you, I whispered, the words slipping out naturally, inevitably. I felt rather than saw his smile. I love you too. More than I thought possible. After graduation, Nathan and I both found jobs in San Francisco, him at a venture capital firm, me at a biotech startup. We moved in together, building a life filled with the kind of everyday joys I'd never experienced, lazy Sunday mornings reading in bed, impromptu dinner parties with friends, planning trips to places I'd only read about. My contact with my family dwindled to obligatory holiday calls that left me tense and drained. Nathan witnessed one such call at Thanksgiving, watching as my face grew increasingly shuttered as my mother detailed all the ways Isabel was thriving as a dance instructor while pointedly ignoring my recent promotion. "Why do you put yourself through that?" he asked afterward, pulling me into a comforting embrace. "They're still my family," I said, the words feeling hollow even as I spoke them. "Family doesn't make you feel like that," he said firmly. "Family builds you up, supports you, loves you unconditionally." "Like yours, you mean?" I couldn't keep the wistfulness from my voice. "Like ours will be," he corrected, then froze, as if he'd said more than he intended. "I mean." I looked up at him, heart suddenly racing. "Our family?" His cheeks flushed, but he didn't back down. "I've been thinking about it. A lot. About us, about the future." He took a deep breath. "I want to build a family with you, Sophia. One where every child is wanted, cherished. Where no one is made to feel like a mistake." The proposal came 2 months later, on New Year's Eve, with a vintage emerald ring that had belonged to his grandmother. I said yes through happy tears, surrounded by our friends and Nathan's family, who cheered and embraced me as one of their own. It was Nathan who suggested we invite my family to the engagement party his parents insisted on hosting. "Give them one more chance," he urged. "Maybe seeing how happy you are, how successful you've become, will help them see what they've been missing." I was skeptical but agreed, sending formal invitations to my parents and Isabel. To my surprise, they accepted, though my mother's email response made it clear they were more interested in meeting Nathan's well-connected family than in celebrating my engagement. The party was held at an elegant restaurant in Napa, with Nathan's large extended family and our circle of friends. I spent the morning fighting nausea, dreading the inevitable comparisons and criticisms from my mother. "It's going to be fine," Nathan assured me, straightening his tie. "My family will run interference if necessary. And if they can't behave, we'll simply ask them to leave." The idea of someone standing up for me against my family was so novel it momentarily silenced my anxiety. My parents and Isabel arrived exactly on time, dressed in what were clearly their best clothes, though they looked out of place among Nathan's family's casual affluence. My mother's eyes swept the room, cataloging the designer dresses, the expensive watches, the easy confidence of old money. "Sophia," she greeted me with air kisses that didn't actually touch my cheeks. "You look nice." The slight pause made it clear she'd searched for and rejected several other adjectives. "Mom, Dad, Isabel," I nodded to each of them. "This is Nathan. My fiancé." Nathan extended his hand warmly. "It's wonderful to finally meet you. Sophia has told me so much about you." My father shook his hand with a stiff smile. "Has she now?" Before the awkwardness could deepen, Nathan's parents approached, all genuine warmth and hospitality. "We're so delighted you could join us," Laura said, embracing my mother, who looked startled at the familiar gesture. "We've been so eager to meet Sophia's family." "Have you known Sophia long?" my mother asked, a calculating gleam in her eye. "Since college," Richard answered easily. "She's been part of our family gatherings for years." My mother's gaze cut to me, surprise and something like hurt flickering across her features. "Years?" "We had no idea Sophia was so involved." "Oh yes," Laura continued, apparently oblivious to the tension. "She's absolutely brilliant, isn't she?" Richard and I were just saying how fortunate Nathan is to have found someone so accomplished and kind. We couldn't be prouder to welcome her to the family. The naked pride in Laura's voice, the casual way she claimed me as someone worthy of admiration, it created a stark contrast that even my parents couldn't miss. For perhaps the first time, they were seeing me through the eyes of others who valued me, not as the inconvenient child who disrupted their plans, but as an accomplished woman worthy of respect. My father cleared his throat. Yes, well, Sophia was always smart. It was the closest thing to a compliment he'd offered in years. The evening progressed with excruciatingly polite conversation, my parents clearly on their best behavior as they navigated a social circle far above their usual station. Isabel attached herself to Nathan's cousins, giggling and flirting, while my mother interrogated Laura about their family background, their connections, their status. It was during dinner that the facade cracked. My father, loosened by several glasses of expensive wine, leaned toward Richard. "Never thought Sophie would land on her feet like this," he said, his voice carrying in a momentary lull in conversation. "She was always an odd duck. Not like her sister." Richard's eyebrows rose. "Odd duck? I'd say she's exceptional. Nathan tells me she's being considered for a patent on her latest research project. That's quite remarkable for someone her age." My father waved this away. "Book smarts. But socially? Never thought she'd find someone, especially someone like your son." He chuckled. "Good thing he saw something in her we missed, eh?" The table went silent. Nathan's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tightly. "I think you've misunderstood something fundamental," Richard said, his voice deceptively mild. "Nathan isn't doing Sophia a favor by marrying her. If anything, we've always felt she might be too good for him." He smiled at Nathan to soften the jest. "She's brilliant, compassionate, and has overcome obstacles that would have defeated many others. We consider ourselves fortunate that she's joining our family." My mother's mouth thinned. "Obstacles? What obstacles?" "We gave her everything." "Except love, apparently," Emma muttered, just loud enough to be heard. My mother's face flushed with anger. "I don't know what kind of lies Sophia has been telling you." "None," I interrupted, finding my voice at last. "I've told them nothing about my childhood, about how you treated me. I was too ashamed, not of myself, but of you. Of having parents who made me feel like a burden from the moment I was born." "That's ridiculous," my father blustered. "We sacrificed everything for you girls." "For Isabel," I corrected quietly. "For your do-over child. The one you were ready for. I was just the mistake you never forgave." The naked truth hung in the air, undeniable. My mother's face contorted with a complex mix of emotions, anger, certainly, but also something that might have been shame. "We did the best we could," she finally said, but the words rang hollow even to my ears. "No," I replied, "you didn't. But that's okay. I don't need you to anymore." I looked around the table at Nathan's family, at the friends who had stood by me, at the man who loved me. I have people who see my worth now. People who don't make their love conditional on what I can do for them or how I fit into their plans. My mother stood abruptly. "I think we should leave." "I think that's best," Nathan agreed, his voice gentle but firm. As they gathered their things, Isabel hesitated, looking at me with confused eyes. We had never been close, how could we be, with my mother constantly positioning us as rivals rather than sisters, but in that moment, I saw a flash of something like recognition. "Congratulations," she said awkwardly. "He seems nice." "He is," I replied. "I hope you find someone who sees you clearly too, Isabel. Someone who loves you for who you are, not for how well you fulfill someone else's dreams." She blinked, as if I'd spoken in a language she didn't quite understand. Then she followed our parents out, glancing back once with an unreadable expression. After they left, Nathan wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "I'm sorry," he murmured against my hair. I thought. I hoped. "It's okay," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. I needed this. I needed to say it out loud, to stop protecting them from the truth of what they did. Laura approached, her eyes soft with concern. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" The endearment, so casually offered, made my throat tight. "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I feel lighter." That night, in the quiet of our hotel room, Nathan held me close as I finally grieved, not for the family I'd lost, but for the little girl who had spent so many years believing there was something fundamentally unlovable about her. I wanted them to be proud of me, I admitted. Even after everything, some part of me still hoped. "I know," Nathan said softly. "That's because you have a generous heart, despite everything. But their inability to see your worth has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them." I nodded against his chest, absorbing the truth of his words. "I don't think I want them at the wedding." "Then they won't be there," he said simply. "We'll surround ourselves with people who genuinely care about us, who want to celebrate our happiness. Your family will think it's strange." Nathan shook his head. "After tonight? I think they understand perfectly. And they're your family too now, Sophia. If you'll have them." "I will," I whispered. Gratefully. My parents sent a terse email 3 days later, claiming I had embarrassed them in front of Nathan's family and demanding an apology. When I didn't respond, my mother called, her voice tight with barely contained fury. "After everything we've done for you," she hissed, "this is how you repay us? By airing our private business to strangers? By making us look like monsters?" "You made yourselves look like monsters," I replied calmly. "I simply stopped pretending it was normal or acceptable." "So that's it? You found a rich boy to take care of you, and now you're too good for your own family?" The accusation might once have wounded me, made me doubt myself. But I had spent too many years working through the damage of her conditional love to be manipulated now. Nathan's money has nothing to do with this. I love him because he sees me, really sees me. Because he values me for exactly who I am, not for what I can do for him or how I fit into his plans. And yes, I've realized I deserve that. From everyone in my life. "Fine," she snapped. "Enjoy your new perfect family. Don't come crying to us when it falls apart." "I won't," I said, and ended the call. I sent formal notifications that they wouldn't be invited to the wedding, offering to meet once more with a family therapist if they were genuinely interested in repairing our relationship. They never responded. Isabel sent a brief text, "Sorry things are so messed up," but made no real effort to maintain a connection independent of our parents. The wedding was everything I could have hoped for: intimate, joyful, surrounded by people who genuinely wished us well. Nathan's parents walked me down the aisle together, a gesture that moved me to tears. Laura had helped me select my dress, Richard had insisted on handling the wine selection, and Emma had organized a bachelorette weekend that left me feeling truly celebrated. "You're a Mitchell now," Laura whispered as she hugged me at the reception. "But you've been our daughter in every way that matters for years." I settled into my new family with a gratitude that sometimes overwhelmed me. The easy affection, the genuine interest in my work and life, the unconditional support, it was everything I'd craved growing up. 5 years into our marriage, when I discovered I was pregnant, my first reaction was pure terror. What if I perpetuated the cycle? What if I resented this child the way my mother had resented me? I don't know how to be a good mother, I confessed to Nathan, my hand protectively covering my still flat stomach. I have no model for it. That's not true, he countered. You know exactly what a mother shouldn't do. And you have Laura, who is an excellent example of what a loving parent looks like. He was right, of course. And when our daughter, Eleanor, was born on a rainy Tuesday morning, I held her tiny form against my chest and made a silent vow: you will never doubt that you are wanted, cherished, loved exactly as you are. Laura and Richard were besotted grandparents, showering Eleanor with the same unconditional love they had extended to me. Emma became the fun aunt who spoiled her shamelessly. Our home was filled with laughter, with casual affection, with the kind of everyday joy I had once thought existed only in movies. I sent a birth announcement to my parents and Isabel, more out of courtesy than expectation. Isabel sent a generic congratulations card. My parents sent nothing. 3 years later, when I was pregnant with our second child, I ran into my father at a medical conference where I was presenting research from my biotech company. He looked older, grayer, his shoulders slightly stooped as he manned a booth for the hospital where he still worked as a nurse. He didn't recognize me at first. When he did, his eyes widened with shock. Sophie? Is that you? I nodded, suddenly conscious of how much had changed: my tailored maternity suit, my confident posture, the speaker badge identifying me as Dr. Sophia Mitchell, lead researcher. Hello, Dad. You look different, he managed. His gaze dropped to my pregnant belly. So, another one on the way? A boy, this time, I said, resting my hand on the swell. Due in May. An awkward silence fell between us. There was so much unspoken, so many years of hurt and misunderstanding. Your mother asks about you sometimes, he finally said. Wonders how you're doing. She knows how to reach me, I replied. My number hasn't changed. He nodded, then surprised me by asking, Are you happy, Sophie? The question was so unexpected, so genuine, that I answered honestly. Yes. Very much so. Good. He seemed to want to say more, but just nodded again. That's good. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Sophie? For what it's worth. I'm proud of you. Always knew you'd do something important. The words I'd longed to hear throughout my childhood now fell flat. Too little, too late. But there was a sincerity in his eyes that made me pause. Thank you, I said simply, and continued on to my presentation. I told Nathan about the encounter that night. Do you want to try reconnecting with them? He asked carefully. Now that there's some distance, some perspective? I considered the question seriously. No, I finally decided. That chapter of my life is closed. They had 20-odd years to see me, to value me. They chose not to. I've moved on, built a life I love. I don't need their approval anymore. Nathan nodded, understanding as always. And if they reach out? If they want to meet the children? Then I'll consider it, I said. Carefully. With boundaries. But they would need to acknowledge the past, take responsibility for it. I won't expose Eleanor and this little one to the kind of conditional love I grew up with. They never did reach out. My mother sent a card when my son, James, was born, formal congratulations with no personal note. Isabel occasionally liked my photos on social media but made no real effort to be part of my life. Instead, I focused on the family we had created: Nathan, our children, his parents, and extended family who had embraced me so completely. I channeled my energy into being the mother I had needed, one who celebrated her children's uniqueness, who made them feel valued for who they were, not what they could accomplish. When Eleanor came home from kindergarten in tears because she wasn't chosen for the lead in the class play, I held her close. "I know it hurts," I told her. "It's okay to be disappointed. But not being chosen for this doesn't make you any less wonderful, any less important, any less loved." "How do you know?" she sniffled. "Because your worth isn't in what you do, sweetheart. It's in who you are. And you are perfectly, wonderfully Eleanor." That's more than enough. The words were as much for the wounded child I had been as for my daughter. The child who had never heard that she was enough, just as she was. The child who had spent years trying to earn a love that should have been freely given. 10 years into our marriage, Nathan and I returned to Stanford for his business school reunion. As we walked the familiar paths where we had first fallen in love, he squeezed my hand. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if we hadn't met?" he asked. I shook my head. "I can't imagine it. You were the first person who made me feel like I had a right to be happy, to be loved." "You always had that right," he said seriously. "I just recognized what was already there." That evening, surrounded by his classmates and their partners, I was introduced to a woman whose name was vaguely familiar. "Sophia Mitchell," she repeated, her eyes widening with recognition. "The biotech innovator? Your research on targeted drug delivery systems is revolutionary." I blushed, still unaccustomed to being recognized for my work despite the growing acclaim. "That's very kind, thank you." "Not kind, accurate," she insisted. "My company has been following your research for years. In fact, we'd love to discuss potential collaboration." As she handed me her business card, I caught Nathan watching me, his eyes filled with pride and love. In that moment, I felt the final pieces of my old self-doubt fall away. I had spent so many years being the unwanted child, the mistake, the burden. Now I was Dr. Sophia Mitchell, loving mother, beloved wife, respected scientist. I had built this life despite my beginnings, not because of them. The family that should have nurtured me had instead taught me exactly what I didn't want to be. The family I created with Nathan showed me what was possible when love was given freely, without conditions or resentment. That night, as we prepared for bed in our hotel room, Nathan wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You were amazing tonight," he murmured. "Everyone was impressed with you." "Even you?" I teased. "Especially me." He turned me to face him. "Always, Sophia. From that first day in the coffee shop when you tried to explain molecular bonds to me like I had any hope of understanding." I laughed at the memory. "You were just trying to get my number." "True," he admitted with a grin. "Best effort I ever made." His expression grew more serious. "I wish you could see yourself through my eyes, just for a moment. See how extraordinary you are." "I'm getting there," I said honestly. "Slowly, but I'm getting there." And I was. Each day with my children, watching them grow secure in the knowledge that they were loved unconditionally. Each accomplishment at work, each recognition of my contributions. Each moment with Nathan and his family, who had become so completely my own. All of it helped heal the wounds of my childhood, helped me see myself clearly at last. I had been the unwanted child. The mistake. The burden. But I had become the beloved wife. The cherished mother. The respected colleague. The valued friend. I had built the life I deserved, not despite being unwanted once, but perhaps because of it. Because I knew exactly what it felt like to be unseen, unvalued, and had vowed never to let anyone in my care feel that way again. The next morning, as we checked out of the hotel, the desk clerk handed me a small package that had been left for me. "What's this?" I asked Nathan, who shook his head, equally puzzled. Inside was a first edition of a classic biochemistry text, with a note tucked between the pages. "Dr. Mitchell, thank you for your inspiring presentation last night. This book changed my life as a young scientist, and I thought you might appreciate adding it to your collection. Your journey from first-generation college student to industry leader is a testament to persistence and brilliance. I hope my daughter has the chance to work in your lab someday. With admiration, Dr. Helena Wong." I traced the embossed cover of the book, deeply moved by the gesture from a woman who knew nothing of my personal struggles, only my professional achievements. "Everything okay?" Nathan asked, noting my emotional reaction. "Better than okay," I said, showing him the note. "Just reflecting on the journey." "It's been quite a ride," he agreed, slipping his arm around my waist as we walked toward our car. "And it's nowhere near over," I added with a smile. I had started life as an unwanted child. But I had become a woman who was wanted, valued, and loved, not for what I could provide or how I fit into someone else's plans, but for exactly who I was. The scars of my childhood would always be part of me. But they no longer defined me. No longer limited me. They were simply the beginning of a story that I had taken control of writing. A story that continued to unfold, page by page, day by day, surrounded by the family I had chosen and who had chosen me in return. And in that choosing, deliberate, wholehearted, unconditional, I had found the belonging I had searched for all my life. It turns out that being wanted isn't about how you enter the world, but about how you're seen within it. About finding the people who recognize your worth inherently, who love you not for what you do or what you provide, but simply for who you are. I had found those people. Built a life among them. Created a family with them. And in doing so, I had finally, permanently, closed the door on being the unwanted child. I was wanted now. Completely. Unconditionally. And that made all the difference.